The high-wire negotiations continue in Israel and Gaza, where late today 11 more hostages were freed. They are now in Israel. Here is edited footage from Al Jazeera showing them being handed over to the Red Cross. The released Israeli hostages include 6 Argentinian citizens, 3 French citizens, and 2 German citizens. In exchange, Israel released 30 children and 3 women who were being held in Israeli prisons. Hamas and Israel also announced that they will extend a pause in the fighting for another 2 days. This is just the latest batch of civilians released, bringing relief and joy to scores of family members. Yesterday, Hamas released 17 hostages, including a 4-year-old American-Israeli dual citizen, Abigail Idan, whose parents were murdered on October 7. In exchange, a Qatari spokesperson said Israel released 39 Palestinian women and children held in Israeli prisons, including a 14-year-old boy. We're learning more about who these Palestinian civilians are and why they were incarcerated. According to news reports by the BBC and CNN, some were serving sentences for attacks on Israelis, while many others were being held on what is called administrative detention, a controversial practice where people are held without any legal process. One of the released Palestinians was Mara Bakir, who was a child when Israeli forces shot and arrested her for allegedly attempting to stab an Israeli officer. Bakir and her family deny the accusations. As of September, the Israeli prison service was holding 146 Palestinian minors in detention or in prison, or what it defined as security grounds. At that time, Israel was also holding 34 Palestinian minors for being in Israel illegally. This is according to B'Tselem, a Jerusalem-based nonprofit that documents human rights violations in the Israeli-occupied Palestinian territories. And joining me now is Noura Erakat, human rights attorney and author of Justice for Some, Law and the Question of Palestine. Noura, thank you so much for being here. I want to start with the question of these releases on both sides. It's been 40-some odd days and 14,000 deaths. I've seen some of your interviews in which you've questioned whether this many deaths were needed to get these prisoners out. What do you make of the fact that this pause is happening now, so many deaths later?
Thanks, Joy. I've actually been really clear that I think that Israel has waged, now we're on day 52, campaign that is not a military campaign, but what is very clearly an ethnic cleansing campaign that has not achieved any military advantage. After 52 days and an incredible humanitarian toll of 14,800 deaths, including 6,000 children, 4,000 women, 36,000 injured, 60 journalists, where my colleague Mouin Rabbani points out that Israel has killed more UN staffers than Hamas leaders. They have not achieved anything through that campaign, that onslaught of what legal scholars and genocide scholars has described as genocidal. In fact, the agreement that they had just agreed to in terms of the exchange of hostages for hostages, many of these Palestinians should be understood as hostages, as they're not prisoners. They did not have adequate due process. Many of them, 2,000 of the 8,000 in captivity, are held under administrative detention without charge or trial. This very same agreement was extended in the first week after October 7th. Israel could have achieved it immediately. It could have achieved it before the ground incursion that began on October 27th. It could have achieved it before the gutting and the incursion of Al-Shifa Hospital, and now 26 out of 35 hospitals. It's precisely why we can see now, if there has been no military advantage, if Israel did not increase its negotiating leverage, but what it did do was mete out this incredible high civilian humanitarian harm, then we are pointing out that the purpose was not, in fact, to release the hostages, which they could have released through this diplomatic exchange, this diplomatic process, a political process, but in fact was a campaign intended to do what many Israeli leaders have told us, which is to turn Gaza into a parking lot, which is to ethnically cleanse the north of Gaza, below the Wadi Gaza line. Now 1.7 million Palestinians, or 70% of the population, has been displaced. And former Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked says that they won't return, but that they should be distributed as refugees across the world. This is why we're saying now it's not enough that we just focus on the refugees, because even those Palestinians that have been returned into the general population can be rearrested under a military occupation where there is no due process or oversight, what is an apartheid regime, and that Israel must be held to account for this amount of destruction that it caused. We cannot turn our eye or attention away from it.
Well, I mean, the point that the Israeli government has said of doing the campaign was to return the hostages. We have seen, as you've said, an extraordinary death toll as a result. And not all of the people being returned, obviously, are Israeli. There are Thai, German, people from other countries as well. To your knowledge, are there multiple countries, the people from those countries involved in this? Because presumably they're also at risk. If Gaza is turned into a parking lot, presumably some of those Thai nationals and German nationals and Irish nationals, et cetera, are under that parking lot as well. Are other governments, to your knowledge, involved in these negotiations?
I'm not sure of their precise involvement. I know that Qatar and Egypt have played a very close role in mediating this agreement, but I want to emphasize again that this amount of death and destruction did not enhance Israel's negotiating leverage to release the hostages. They could have released them in week one. That was on the table. They could have released them, all the women and children, as Hamas has offered multiple times. Israel refused it. And in fact, the right wing of the Israeli government, which is now the governing coalition, continues to refuse it. The Israeli leadership finally acquiesced to this agreement because of agitation from within Israel. It was the families of those Israelis that were held hostage that insisted that they enter into a diplomatic agreement, because there is no military solution to this, Joy. There is no military solution. Hamas is not an exogenous force within Palestinian society. Hamas has emerged and is part of it is wherever Palestinians are, is a concept in people's minds, and will, even if you decimate it, it'll either go underground or it will be reproduced in another political party with a military wing that insists on using military force that must be used in line with international law, but will insist on using military armed force to ensure the end of the occupation. So this isn't a situation where Israel can just get rid of Hamas. You can't beat an occupation out of existence, except that that's what Israel is trying to do through an ethnic cleansing campaign. You actually have to end the occupation. Okay. There's no way around this.
Let me show you a picture. I want to show you a picture. I'm very curious to know what you would think of it. This is the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, giving a tour to one of the kibbutzim that was attacked on October 7 to one Elon Musk. What is happening here? Why is Elon Musk, who has made some pretty heinous anti-Semitic statements on his version of Twitter and been accused of anti-Semitism, what is he doing in Israel? Why would he be received by the Prime Minister at this time?
Well, I'm not really sure why Elon Musk is there. I will say that it points out to a phenomenon that we have seen, which is the conflation of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, where we can have very explicit anti-Semites like former President Donald Trump, who pointed to a room of Jewish Americans and referred to Israel as their country, highlighting this trope of dual loyalties and nationalities, who said that, refers to their wealth and their power in a way that hits on classic anti-Semitic tropes, and yet is hailed as Israel's, number one ally. And this points to this phenomenon of the difference between support for Israel and support and protection for Jewish life. Those are not the same thing. The opposition to Zionism and the idea that you oppose an ethno-national state that is contingent on maintaining a Jewish demographic majority that requires the ongoing removal removal of Palestinians and the confiscation of their lands is not the same thing as bigotry towards Jewish people. And that's precisely why you see a very robust, diverse coalition, including Jewish Voice for Peace and other anti-Zionist Jews who are part of this movement. And so when we see Elon Musk there and you're scratching your head and saying, but wait a minute, I thought that he was actually, you know, has said very anti-Semitic things. It's precisely because these are not the same thing. You can support Israel and hate Jewish people. And that's the sad truth here is that many of us who are fighting to free Palestine are fighting for all people's freedom, including for Jewish liberation, which we see as part and parcel of our human emancipation. And we find our safety in solidarity.
Noor Erakat, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.